great to talk about brand building. There's one thing I want to dive a little bit into here, and that's the idea of choosing which category to play in before you basically start building your brand. And then you can have an academic discussion about whether you build the brand or the category first. I don't really care. I think the important thing is to know what you do and finding the right playing field. So briefly on me, my name is Morten Stengaard. Today, I would like to talk about category building and basically practical learnings from establishing a premium sparkling fruit wine brand and category. So, as I said briefly, we built Andersen Winery, which is a sparkling fruit wine brand out of Denmark. You could say almost like champagne style, but made from anything else than grapes. So, same méthode traditionnelle when we produce and so on, but basically a product that can stand next to a champagne in terms of presence, style, and so on. But I'll come more into that. So that's one of the experiences I come with today. And then on top of that, we work with a little bit more than 200 brands in Bemakers, and a lot of these brands are doing exactly that. They are building new categories, they are expanding existing categories, and all of them are basically working on their positioning. So that's what I bring to the table, and that I want to talk a little bit about. So I tried to think back to when we started building our sparkling fruit wine company, and just figure out what were the 5 most important lessons that we took away. And many of these lessons are also discussions they apply to the discussions we have today with our brand partners in Bemakers when they start distributing in a new country or something like that, or building their products, their brands in Europe. Then we always start with the categories. What is it actually that they're getting themselves into? And there are 5 different points I want to dive into. I mean, basically, finding the right playing field, talking a little bit about the price point and how you position. That's obviously important. Then delving a little bit on drinking occasions, how to position your brand. I think that's super important and often underestimated. Then as a small brand and as in a new category, it's more important than ever, I would say, to also focus on the actual demand building. Actually going out and finding customers and figuring out how you make it work. And then finally, and probably the most important thing when you're building a new brand in a new category is really to be persistent. Stay on working, stay on learning, and then applying the learnings. But let's dive into these 5 once at a time. And as I said, I'll use Andersen Winery as my example for doing this. I think these thoughts, these ideas can be applied to any brand in any category, whether you're building a new brand in an existing category, whether you're building a new brand in a new category, and so on and so forth. But the ideas are the same, and it's in my opinion, and from what I've learned, I think it's super important to have this in mind when you start building a brand. So the first thing is basically to find a niche category that you can establish, that you can grow and potentially own. And if you can not find a way to differentiate compared to what's out there already, then I think it's worth stopping and pausing and figuring out, is this actually something I should do? Because you all know it, there's plenty of brands out there. There's plenty of spirits in basically all the big established categories. So, the world doesn't necessarily need another gin or whiskey or wine or whatever. So it's our job as brand builders to basically figure out why the world needs exactly what we are planning to offer. What we figured out with the Andersen brand when we started building it was that there are all these perfectly positioned sparkling grape wines out there. So you have the champagnes, you have the cavas from Spain, you have the sect from Germany, you have the proseccos, and so on and so forth. So plenty of sparkling grape wines of all sorts of qualities and price levels, but no one had really built something based on other fruits and berries than grapes. So in Denmark, there's a rich tradition from many years ago in building low-priced fruit wines. I think it was basically because we didn't have grapes, so they tried to do all sorts of other stuff. A lot of it was poor quality, but there were some wines being built back in the days. We figured out that we could use all these great raw materials out of Denmark, rhubarb, apple, blackcurrant, etc., raspberry, and so on. And then apply all the techniques that you use when working with grape wines to basically build something that was new, something that was fresh. And that became the idea behind Andersen Winery, namely to use these proven techniques from the wine world and then combine them with quality fruits and berries to build something that was new and to develop basically a premium sparkling fruit wine brand and category. So, that was the first thing, basically, to try to figure out where are we actually playing. And this basically became the whole idea for the brand that we started building. The first and probably one of the most important decisions we figured is to figure out how to position in terms of perceived quality, and quality is really perceived because we all talk about that the liquid needs to be great, and it does. I totally agree. But there's also a lot of perception around a brand, around a product. Does it look good? Does it actually taste good? So quality is very much a perceived thing. And the same with price in principle. I mean, this is expensive. No, it's not expensive. Yes, it's expensive. I mean, it's all about perception. 10 euro. It depends on what it is. Is it expensive? Is it not expensive? So, but there can be no doubt that there needs to be this ratio between quality and price perceived needs to be right. And you need to figure out from the start where you want to play. A lot of the brands that I've been in contact with over the past years, also since starting building Bemakers, I mean, there's a lot of craft brands out there that are starting at a relatively high price point. And that can be absolutely fine, and it can work well. And we did the same with our sparkling fruit wine company. But you also then need to build the perceived quality of it, right? Because when you come in with a new brand, I mean, people are like, it's not really, is it high quality? Is it worth the price? You come in with a high price point, but can you actually sell this? Can a distributor actually go out and sell this to customers? So, there needs to be a match between quality and price. And I mean, you would probably say, yeah, that's common sense. But then you would probably also be surprised to see how often that's not really the case. So I often recommend the brands we work with to, if you want to position high, that's great, but you just need to understand that then it takes longer and it costs more to build the perceived quality, to actually build quality in the mind of your customers, to understand that this is high quality, it's worth the money. But it can absolutely be worth doing, and that's what we try to do with our sparkling fruit wine. We positioned this product at around 30 euro in retail. So, that's roughly index 80 of a standard champagne in most of the markets we work in. But that is really key in my experience to get that right, and then find benchmark categories that you can work within. So we deliberately chose to position the Andersen product in the same price range as a premium sparkling grape wine, and not position it what would otherwise have been a possibility, namely as a cider, which is usually much lower priced. But by positioning it, next to a sparkling premium fruit wine, you also help build the perception in the customer's mind, and that's obviously important. And then thirdly, identifying drinking occasions where you can fit in. I think looking for drinking occasions when the product can fit in, and then either you can build new demands or you can substitute into existing demands with this category. And initially, we started building dry sparkling apple wines because we thought, okay, we can basically go into the restaurants. If customers that have had a champagne for the last 6-8 times they visited, try something new, try something that's based on apple, same, but different, and then get it in that way. That worked relatively well, but we also quickly saw that there were other occasions, so we could basically tap into the whole dessert segment, Because the trick with fruits and berries is that the acidity is much higher in many fruits and berries, especially out of the Nordics, where we have, a good climate for those fruits and berries. But then with the high acidity, you can also add a lot more sugar and still have a very balanced wine. And that means that it can suddenly work very well with dessert, where most of the sparkling grape wines don't really work. But when we figured that out and figured out that there was actually a need to present something sparkling, something refreshing for desserts, then basically we could start tapping into the dessert category, or the category for dessert wines. So it's all about finding the right drinking occasions, and then, as I said, make your customer shine. Then I think, build demand is probably again one of the most necessary things. Obviously, when you're launching a brand in a new category or in an existing category, it's important. When you're launching a new brand in a non-existing category, it's essential. And no one is better than the brand owners, basically, to tell the story, to build demand, and basically start getting the product to market. We spend a lot of time visiting restaurants, visiting bars, visiting specialty stores in the early days to basically get the product in, but also to get some feedback and figure out what it actually takes to succeed in specialty stores, in retail, in restaurants, and also in e-commerce for that matter. And as I know Chris Maffeo will be here tomorrow on stage talking about distribution. If you haven't met Chris yet, check out his Maffeo Drinks podcast. It's pretty amazing. But as he says, brands are built bottom up. They're basically built by, brands going out and talking to customers out at the end of the value chain, not so much by pushing the brand into a distributor, then push it down to the wholesaler. I mean, you need to go out in front of customers to build your brand. And I'm just saying here, so are categories. I mean, you cannot build a category by just pushing something down the throat of a distributor. It simply won't work. So you need to go out in front of customers to make it work. We typically, just as a very concrete example, when we launch in a new market with the Andersen Winery brand, we go to a new city, we book restaurant meetings, 8-10 restaurants over 3 days. We ship our products it could be to Berlin. And then we basically go and do tastings with 8-10 restaurants. Usually we can close about 50%, maybe a little bit less, a little bit more when we are there. Because by now we know what the restaurants are looking for. We have done it in other markets. And there's no one better than us to go and open up a new market. We know exactly what it takes and how we can increase the conversion rate from a visit to buying customer. And also after that, basically to get them to repurchase. No one knows that better than the brand owners. And you should really, if you're building brand, don't be lazy. Go out and do the work, because that's exactly what it takes. And you'll also learn a lot that you can take back home and then figure out, okay, why is this market different than the one we were launching last month? I mean, I go to Stockholm, visit restaurants now in Berlin, and then down to Munich. What's the differences between, if any? And then you apply that over time as you build. Cool. Final thing. Get started, adjust your approach as you learn new things, and keep on going. I mean, it's so easy to be frustrated and demotivated because, the customers, they don't get it, and so on and so forth. But continuing to go and to continuing to build and continuing to learn is really what it takes in my experience to get a brand off the ground. With the Andersen brand, we are innovating within other categories as well. Now we're also in the RTD space, doing some sparkling gin tonics, where we basically ferment a tonic from scratch, and then with small bubbles as a champagne, and then we add gin in the dosage and do stuff that's crazily fun, but also very inspiring for the customers we work with. That was all for me. Thank you so much.